Today we're here with Roxy, a menstrual cycle nutritionist who helps women navigate through period problems. Her approach includes helping women navigate fertility, PCOS, and other PMS-related issues. Today is really about Roxy's personal journey, which is an almost decade-long journey with Hashimoto's, an autoimmune disease. There are around 80 known autoimmune diseases, but today we're going to focus on Hashimoto's. If you know anyone who's struggling with an autoimmune disease or Hashimoto's, or if you think you might be suffering from the disease, or you have just been diagnosed, then this is the episode for you. Hey, welcome to Roxy on the Living Health podcast today to talk about autoimmune disease and your personal story, which sounds from the conversations we've had to be a long journey, a frustrating journey, but also a journey and a story of a lot of hope and very inspiring. And we'll get into the questions shortly, but I want to ask you an icebreaker question that I think is quite indicative of health. We usually ask around sleep or cycles, but today I'm going to ask about your last period cycle.
My periods right now are much better than what they used to be. I still suffer with primary dysmenorrhea, which is painful periods without a cause. So we'll get into that in a second, but I ticked a lot of causes off as I went over the past decade, and I still have a lot of period pain. But my last cycle and usually my last few cycles have been much more manageable. So I used to take loads of ibuprofens and really strong prescribed kind of drugs by the NHS. The pain would never just stop. So right now I can take just an ibuprofen and I'm fine. But my last period was quite terrible. I've been bleeding for 2 weeks after my ovulation because I've been really stressed with a lot of things. I moved countries. So it can happen. If it's a one isolated incident, it's okay. But if it happens monthly, it's not okay. For me, it was a one-time isolated incident. And because I tracked my cycle, I didn't panic. But it wasn't a very pleasant experience, not my most pleasant period. But yeah, it was the fact that I had the knowledge about it helped me navigate it better.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. You look amazing. You wouldn't know. And I think that's also a big theme of chronic illness and disease is that sometimes you don't know what someone's going through.
We look so great, but we feel so shit.
Exactly. Okay, let's start with a bit about you, where you grew up and what your childhood was like and where you're from and all of those good things.
So I grew up in Romania in a very small town. Population was back then maybe 50,000 people. I had a great upbringing in the sense that we had a big garden, all the vegetables and fruit possible there, so we grew everything. Back then I didn't used to appreciate it, but now I'm like, every time I go home and my mom hands me a homegrown tomato, I'm like, this is so different from the plastic that I buy from Tesco. I can tell the difference. So now I am appreciative of it. But I had a great upbringing in terms of food. We had bees. My grandma had a big farm with horses, with sheep. We always had fresh produce basically from the back garden. And it was amazing in that sense.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
And then moving on to puberty and your first few cycles, what was that like for you?
Okay, I feel like I set the context quite well because we did have a big garden in the back of the house. So when I got my first period, I was actually helping pick the potatoes, harvest the potatoes. And I felt something like, oh, what's going on? There's something that I never felt before. So I went to the bathroom and I was like, oh God, I got my period. Is this it? I didn't grow up in a household where we were talking about these things. I'm from Eastern Europe. We don't talk about things. Feelings and therapy doesn't exist. So I just had to tell my mom, hey, I got my period. And she just handed me a bunch of things and deal with it. Not because she didn't want to talk to me about it, but it was not something that she used to do. And not because she didn't want to share or help, but just because she felt like I had to deal with it like she dealt with it, like her mom dealt with it. So it was a traumatic experience because I didn't know what to expect. And then the cramps came. And ever since I got my first period, I had incredibly painful cramps, literally legs up the wall, crawling in pain on the floor for 12 hours, literally crying all the time. So that was that as well to deal with. The first ever in my life that I felt that kind of pain, to deal with it alone, it was not pleasant.
Yeah, and it's hard because I think that generation of women, even me, I'm still learning about my body. It's hard to them to educate us if they're not fully educated themselves.
I agree.
When you say that about your first painful periods, how did you advocate for yourself? What kind of support did you get around that?
I didn't get a lot of support. I got the first 3 or 4 years, I believe I was just given medicine by my mom, like what she knew. But then when she saw that I'm getting worse and worse, like to the point that I had to go to the emergency room, and my periods were not heavy, but they were so painful. It was shattering. Like I was not able to see in front of my eyes. That's how much pain I was in. And it wasn't going away with ibuprofens. It wasn't going away with any medicine that she was giving me. So she took me to the gynecologist, and lo and behold, they gave me the birth control pill. They said I have cysts on my ovaries, and that's why I have so much pain. Now, back then, I was so happy that I finally got a resolution. Now, looking back, I'm thinking that was so the wrong thing to do. Put someone that's barely had her cycle for a few years on the birth control pill without doing appropriate tests, without having a plan to like wear her off it. So I got on the birth control pill, and after that, I feel like that was the beginning of my autoimmune journey, because my gut health started pretty much going sideways. I was having bloating, I was having pain. I developed ulcers in my stomach, so I had to be taken to the emergency room quite a few times with bleeding ulcers. So it was after I started the pill. So I feel I was so young, I was 14 or 15. I don't really understand exactly if that's the case because I can't remember it, because it's almost 2 decades later for me. But I feel like that was the starting point of that snowball effect towards me developing an autoimmune condition.
And what kind of pill were you on? Were you on the combination or?
I was on Yasmin, the combined pill. So I was like 21 days, 7 days off. I was on it for 5 or 6 years. And to me was, yeah, great, win. I'm not having pain anymore. No surprises. I was so happy until I wasn't.
Yeah. Were you just really unsure, waiting to get answers?
Again, my mom, bless her heart, I started having panic attacks when I was 17, I believe. After 2 years on the pill, I started having these horrible panic attacks. I remember being out with a friend, and the guy just gave me a paracetamol because he thought I was having a cold, because I didn't know what I was feeling. I was like, I'm feeling like there's something on my chest. And he's like, oh, you're just getting a cold. And I'm like, maybe. When you first get your panic attack, you absolutely do not understand where to take it from. I don't even know how to describe it as a feeling. It's just so harsh and intense, like nothing else you've ever felt before. So the guy just offered me a paracetamol. I remember it to this day. He was so worried about me. So I'll just take you home. And I'm like, okay, cool. Just give me a paracetamol and take me home. And then after I dealt with the panic attacks and it started becoming more and more clear that something's wrong, I asked my mom, hey, can you take me to the doctor? She took me to an eye, mouth, and ear doctor, like an everything doctor, because I felt like I couldn't breathe. Like I felt pressure in my sinuses. That's how panic attacks can manifest in very different ways. But for me, it was literally pressure on my sinuses, and an elephant was sitting on my chest. And I just couldn't breathe. Like logically, there's oxygen, you can breathe, it's fine. But you're in that fight or flight, and you're aware of your surroundings, and you just feel like this impending doom constantly. So you just can't breathe. You're stressed and panicked and you can't breathe. So my mom took me to all these doctors for a year. We went every other month to a different doctor, and they couldn't figure out what's wrong with me. I was explaining the symptoms and they didn't know. So I started doing my own research. I was 18, 19 by then. I started doing my own research, and I don't even know what I was Googling. Can't breathe, nose pain, like all these kind of keywords that could come to my mind that I could place, because when you're trying to figure things out and you're so young and you're on your own and no one else understands what's going on, it's a terrible feeling and it's terrifying. So I was trying to do it on my own, and eventually after a few months, I started going into vitamin deficiency. I was seeing like stuff about vitamin B6 and then magnesium, and then I started trailing more into the science part of stuff. And then slowly but surely, I found out these were panic attacks. And then again, more research went in, and I found out it could be connected to the pill. And then I was already 23 or 24 when I decided to get off the pill, and thinking that it could be the cause of my panic attacks. So I did, and sure, they just stopped being so intense. But by that point, my body was already wired with this impending doom of catastrophic misinterpretation for the smallest things. Like even going on the tube when I was going to work was giving me a panic attack. So it was also a matter of stopping and understanding what I can do and rewiring my brain after I got off the pill. But definitely, I'm pretty sure that the pill was the reason for my panic attacks.
It's so hard because how do you advocate for your health when you can't even articulate what's going on because you're so young and you've never experienced it before? And panic attacks can be just awful. I've had them. They're just,
You've had them as well.
yeah. You don't know what's happening. You think you're dying. I like, it wasn't fainting, but you're like collapse on the floor and you're like, am I dying? And that sense of doom.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you come to, it's just terrifying. And then like the anxiety of, am I going to get it again? Where am I going to get it again? And how I'm going to handle this? And your poor mom, like.
She really tried. She didn't know. And she still, as I said, we don't really talk about feelings. And there's a lot of feelings going behind a panic attack. So she tried as much as possible to help me. And I really appreciate that. But I still had to figure things out on my own. And I'm glad I did. It made me stronger. It made me more resilient. And it made me really deal with it face on and just know for sure that I own it.
Yeah, and we had a really similar experience because I had a lot of side effects on the pill that I had no idea were the pill until I think it was too late and I had to come off. And yeah, there's just not enough information around it. But anyway, moving on. After that, you finally discovered it's the pill. You got off the pill. And I think around 2 months before your period returned, or can you explain what you went through that, I guess, just before your diagnosis?
So I was really focused on managing my panic attacks after I got off the pill. And I did not lose my period. Weirdly, I did not lose my period as a result of being on the pill. My period returned within 1 or 2 months, which is the normal timeline. I lost my period because of my autoimmune condition, not because of the pill. But after I got off the pill, it's like my body started going into this very weird attack mode. Not attack mode, but like actually trying to restart itself. So all the things that I was suppressing by the pill and I wasn't feeling came rushing to the surface. Although my panic attacks were getting better, my gut symptoms were flaring, my skin was a mess, I was having bloating every single day, so much pain. I was being able to wear a pair of jeans in the morning and don't dream to fit in them in the evening because like my belly was doubling in size basically. It was absolutely terrible. And then the painful periods came. That was worse than before. And by that time I was already like deep into the research on panic attacks and vitamins and mineral deficiencies and how those play, what are their role into the way that I'm feeling. So I decided to just start going further and I just started researching gut symptoms. Then I started researching the way that I'm feeling after the pill, which was I had my hair falling off. I gained so much weight. I think I gained 10 kilograms in the span of 6 months. I was just feeling terribly fatigued all the time. I couldn't focus. I sat down to write something and it wasn't computing. It just didn't click for me. Anything that was on the screen was like words were mingling. At some point, I thought that my dyslexic, I can't read anymore. But it was just me being so fatigued to beyond the point that I can even just understand what's in front of me. And that was what I know now to be a sign of extremely low thyroid production.
Wow. Oh my God. You spoke about it, I think, in one of your social posts where you felt so disconnected from your body, or I think you said your body wasn't your own.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that thought and how you were feeling at that time?
Let's start with the weight side of things. I've never had a good relationship with food. I was always afraid of gaining weight. I was always afraid of eating. I was going months at a time, starving myself when I was a teenager because I just felt like I wasn't fitting because I was always more on the athletic side, which I also was a bit more curvier, which now, thanks estrogen, love it. But back then it was not that great. From a mental point of view, how hard it was for me to not feel like I fit in. And I was always like dieting and always like making sure I don't eat. So for me, the fact that I got off the pill and I started gaining weight, even though I didn't change my diet. I was practically eating nothing in a day, which was absolutely terrible, but also terrifying for me to think, oh my God, this just doesn't stop. Like I can't do anything anymore. I don't drink anymore. Maybe I'll have a cocktail or something every 2-3 months, if that. But I used to love like going out with my friends and having a drink. I wasn't able to do that anymore. Every time I was having a drink, I had to like rush straight to the bathroom. It was like going in and wanting to go out. I was like feeling so ill, so sick, and I just couldn't cope with that anymore. My hair was falling out in chunks. I genuinely lost half of my hair, maybe in that 6-8 months before I actually went in and got my diagnosis, between the time that I got off the pill and I decided to just like really go ballistic on my health and start advocating for myself. And then it was like I was very emotional. And as I said, I couldn't focus. I felt like I had no control. And for someone with panic attacks to feel like they have no control is like just adding gas to the fire and every other flammable solution that you can find inside. So it was a terrible combination of a lot of things that went wrong.
And so you really honed in on your health and researching like crazy. Can you talk about that up until going to different doctors and trying to get that diagnosis? And I guess also, I think you had a surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a surgery too. Okay, so I'll just give you the timeline in order. So I got off the pill. I started researching before I got off the pill. Then I started focusing on my gut health and started going from it mingles. So I can't really separate going to doctors and before, because it's like I was trying to research on my own, then I started going to doctors, then I did both. So I did everything that I could to make sure that I get an answer for my problems. Basically, I got off the pill and then I had the gut symptoms. I started looking at nutrition. I started reading papers. I started reading books, everything that I could get my hands on. That's how I became a certified nutritionist. And then that taught me a lot. So I changed my diet. I changed my lifestyle. But I went into the extreme direction. No gluten, no dairy, no soy, which was not good, because when something would sneak up in my diet, then it would be a very terrible flare-up. So I went to the extreme end, which is something that I don't wish anyone to do, because it's dangerous. If you don't have anyone to pull you out of there and you don't know how to pull yourself out of it, it will come back to you and it will bite you in the ass, basically. But that's what I knew what to do back then. So that's what I did. I started getting all the books: no dairy, no soy, no gluten, no good. Like literally, like my food tasted like nothing. But then so I started with that. And as I finished my certification, I started getting more into, okay, what's the role of nutrition in period problems? Because I thought there must be I learned about inflammation in my degree. I learned about nutrients and the role that they play in the 3 monthly cycles, in the uterine cycle, ovulatory cycle, and hormonal cycle. And then before that, I learned about the gut, that a lot of the nutrient absorption happens in the gut. So when your gut is not in a good state, which for sure as hell mine wasn't, that absorption of nutrients does not happen. And as a consequence, your body doesn't get to send the nutrients where it needs to. So I thought, okay, maybe that's the reason why my periods are so painful, because of inflammation. Maybe also that's the reason why I put on so much weight. So I doubled down on that. And in the span of 4 to 6 months, I managed to lose 7 kilograms, put on some muscle, and also get better periods. Like they were not as terribly painful anymore. They were manageable, but they were still bad. And at that point, I lost it. Like I lost my period. When I finally managed to get my body a bit in control, I lost my period. So I was just telling my partner, I don't understand. I don't know what else to do. I feel like I'm doing everything, which is something that my clients, whenever they come to me, they tell me, I feel like I'm doing everything and I'm still not getting anywhere. And that's how I felt. So that's why I chose to do what I do, help other women, because I know this is such a cliche story. I do it because it happened to me, but it's so very true. So I lost my period. I didn't have an ovulation I knew a little bit about period tracking, but I didn't have an ovulation for a while. And then I started going to doctors as well. And one of them, I'm so very grateful for them. It was referred to me by a doctor back home in Romania. So I went to doctors between the UK and Romania. I just really wanted to get things done as fast as possible. And the NHS was very slow. So whenever I would just go get things done in Romania that I couldn't get in London. So one of the doctors back home, she's amazing, she referred me to an endocrinologist because she looked at my weight, she looked at my cycles, she looked at a lot of the things that were just not going well for me. And she said, okay, let's send you to this person. And then that person, bless his heart, tested my thyroid. I would have never in a million years thought. But when I told him the weight was going up and down like every other month or so, and barely managed to stabilize it, and then I lost my period. So he tested my thyroid antibodies. And again, lo and behold, I had antibodies in the thousands. He also tested my prolactin levels, which is basically a hormone secreted by the pituitary, which is a gland in the brain. that together with the hypothalamus, they are the CEO and project manager of your endocrine glands. They control the cycle and every other gland, how they function and how much hormone they release. He tested the prolactin levels, and that was also in the thousands. So it's 3,000, whereas the normal level of a pregnant woman is 400, and the normal level of a non-pregnant woman is 200. So mine was 3,700 at that point. So that, in combination with my elevated antibodies, when you have Hashimoto's, you have high TSH. My TSH was like 7 or 8. I was not producing T3 and T4. T3 is the active thyroid hormone. T4 is the hormone produced by the thyroid in 80% of the instances that gets converted to T3, which is the active hormone. I wasn't producing any of that, not nearly enough the normal ranges. So he was like, okay, there's a big problem here. So there's no wonder that you lost your period. And then after that, we looked, okay, let's see why your periods are so painful. Let's send you for some scans, some MRIs, etc. So then he sent me for a scan, an ultrasound, and then they saw a dermoid cyst, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, a dermoid cyst is basically, it was 16 centimeters. It was really big on my left ovary, and I really thought I was going to lose my ovary. I lost some function of it. It's not as it was before because it was literally engorged in it, but my doctor managed to save it, my doctor back in Romania. It was a 16 centimeter dermoid cyst, which had teeth, had hair. It was basically, it's a type of cyst. So there's chocolate cyst, there's regular cyst, and there's dermoid cyst. And those hurt. They cannot explode, but they can twist your ovary. And the pain that I was feeling, partially the pain that I was feeling is because it was twisted in the ovary. So whenever I was having my uterus growing because it was thickening with the lining and before the blood was shedding, it was pressing on it and like really making it pulsate. It was absolutely terrible. But at that point, I had a resolution. I knew there's something going on and there's something wrong. I didn't want to take thyroid hormone. I just wanted to try the natural way. Luckily, I think I was lucky after trying many doctors that I won't even mention because honestly, they're not even worth mentioning by the way they treated me, that this one actually helped me with understanding like what kind of diet would be great for Hashimoto's, which what I was diagnosed with at that point, with the high antibodies and the high TSH and low thyroid levels. And he just helped me put together a plan, and I stuck with it with my knowledge and his support. In 3 months, my antibodies started going down. And then in 9 months, they were within the normal range. And that was it. Like my thyroid autoimmune condition was in remission just because of the diet. Now, I'm not saying just do it because that. I was lucky. I was quite young when 6-7 years ago, I was quite young when this was discovered. I was lucky that, by all means, I know it's a terrible story, but I say that I was lucky because I actually managed to get this discovered soon.
How old were you at that time?
I was 24, I believe. 24 or so, yeah. So young. And
what was it like getting that diagnosis? Because I imagine you feel relief, but then also a little bit of grief too.
I was so happy because I was like, finally, I can work on something. It's tangible. I can fix it. But it was also hard because actually, you know what? The diagnosis itself wasn't hard. The way that I was living with it was, I always have this outlook of life. At least if I know what it is, I can deal with it. I'm not a person that says, oh my God, I have this label to carry my whole life. I don't even think about it, like ever. It doesn't matter to me. As long as I know what it is and I can fix it, that's all it matters. And I worked on a lot of protocols that I created myself. And with time, years on, I'm still really okay. Now I'm actually in the middle of a flare-up because I had so much stress in the last 2 months. And also the cycle part that I told you earlier, that I was bleeding from ovulation to menstruation. That was a sign as well that I'm in a flare-up. But it's better to have a diagnosis than not to have it. So that's what I would say. That's something to look at in a positive way.
And so you had this C-section-like surgery, you said, to remove the cyst. What was life after that? Talk me through post-surgery.
It was hard. It's a very painful surgery. It's extremely painful. I heard stories of people saying, oh, I was up and running in a week. I'm like, I couldn't move properly for 2 months. I don't know, maybe it matters a lot who does it as well. But for me, I have, if anyone's watching, my scar is like this big, it's pretty big. And it kept opening and closing even though I was not doing much. So it was a very harsh recovery.
Can I ask, sorry to interrupt, why was it C-section, not keyhole? Was it because the cyst was so big?
Yeah, I went to 4 different doctors and neither could do it laparoscopically. They had to do it with an open surgery because it was a huge cyst. It was terribly big. After she took the cyst out, it was a hard recovery, and it took a lot of willpower to not stop my journey for supporting my thyroid, like moving my body, eating well. It took a lot of that willpower during the recovery post-surgery to continue doing the things that I knew would help me make the recovery easier and keep my thyroid healthy. Because no matter how much in remission you are, it's still an autoimmune condition and you carry it with you for the rest of your life. So if you're not paying attention and you're doing the wrong things for a long time, you can still have fun. I have a lot of fun. I have a very normal life. But if I do something for a very long time, eat a lot of junk food for 2 weeks, or just go drinking and partying not that I ever do that, honestly. But it's just if I do the wrong things for too long of a time, then I relapse again and I flare up, and that antibodies skyrocket again. So it was a difficult period and it was extremely painful. I really feel for anyone who has to go through a C-section surgery, and anyone who says women choose the easy way out when they want to give birth and just go for the C-section. They have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Like, genuinely, it's terribly painful.
And what would you say to any other woman listening that has just been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, or maybe they're going through the cyst procedures or being diagnosed in that area as well? What would you say to them that you wish you could say to yourself in that moment back then?
It gets better. It gets better, but you have to fight for yourself. Unfortunately, let's say that this episode goes mostly to UK audiences. NHS is not the most reliable way to get the diagnosis that you need, and the fastest. Once I waited 10 months for a scan. It was absolutely just like a simple ovarian scan. That's why my cyst actually grew that much, because I had to wait so long for a scan and I couldn't go back to Romania. So the second that I went back to Romania, it doubled in size by the time that I actually managed to get the scan. If you're recently diagnosed or you're in the process of getting a diagnosis, one, fight for yourself. Like, really, truly advocate, and don't let anyone tell you that you are not entitled to certain tests. For example, if you're in the process of being diagnosed and you go into your surgery, like to your GP, they will try to only test your TSH. Don't let them do that. Tell them that you need to get your T3 and T4 tested, because without that, you will not get anywhere. The TSH only gets impacted after the thyroid has been pretty much destroyed by antibodies. So if you wait too long, if you're not in that sweet spot where you can see the TSH, but it's not too late yet, like I was, and I was really lucky for that, and you wait too long, and usually you don't really get diagnosed in your 20s, you get diagnosed in your late 30s or 40s with a thyroid condition, just tell them that you need to get your T3 and T4 tested. This is my theory. Every single surgery has a certain budget that they can do for inpatient and outpatient procedures. And if you're not extremely ill, they won't utilize that budget on you. They'll wait for someone that probably is in a worse condition. And I get it. Like, it's probably really difficult to work with limited funds. They're doing a great job, but they're not doing as good as we deserve. So it's always important to say, test my TSH, test T3 and T4. And if you can hack it, tell them to test your antibodies. But if not, try to go privately to order the antibodies test. I think it might cost like £20 to get them off the internet, like a self-test at home. It's very easy to do. You can send them just through Royal Mailbox, and then you pick up the results. And the second thing, I already said it does get better. You really need to focus on your diet and fix your gut, because in any autoimmune condition, one of the things that we see in clients is that once we support their gut health, the thyroid levels go down very fast, between 1 to 3, 4 months, depending how well they stick to their gut protocols. I've tested that on 11 clients so far. Within 3 months, all of their antibodies and TSH fell to a almost normal range. So everything can be done from your gut health. It's extremely key. So that's one thing to know and not to panic. If you follow the right protocol, you will be able to get your antibodies low. If you're in the early stage, if you're in your 40s and your thyroid is absolutely destroyed, you can still make a lot of good improvements from your gut and from your nutrition, but you might also need the support of desiccated thyroid hormone or levothyroxine or other kind of classical approaches, let's call them.
It might not be helpful to reflect on this, but do you feel like if your Hashimoto's was detected earlier, it might be less prominent in your life now, or is it just is what it is? It doesn't matter when you receive that diagnosis.
It matters to receive it early, and I think I was lucky enough to receive it early. I don't think earlier than that. I never heard of cases where people in their teens, they go to the doctors and they get a thyroid tested as the first. I don't think a year would have made a difference earlier. Further, yes, definitely. If I waited longer, it would have made a huge difference. But earlier, no. I think my life is as good as it can get health-wise right now because I was diagnosed so early.
Just listening to you and obviously speaking to you a few times now, you just seem so positive. And I feel like that is a theme with some of the women I've spoken to that have like chronic disease and illness. They're like such positive, bubbly, warm people.
We don't get tipped over by the everyday. You don't sweat the small stuff when you go through big things anymore. I don't want to diminish anyone's everyday. It's whatever you feel is normalized to your situation. If you haven't experienced something worse, you don't know worse. And I get that. I don't wish that on anyone. So if getting your coffee spilled over by someone bumping you on the street ruins your whole day, okay, that's fine. It happens. That's your worst thing. And I'm happy for you for that. But if you go through these kind of things where you have to really do things that you shouldn't have to be doing at such an early age, really learn how to speak to doctors that can be so intimidating, and learning to step up and stand up for yourself. And when all of your friends go partying, you're like, I'm sorry, I actually don't really want to go, because you just really don't feel like going. You just want to really take care of yourself. You've outgrown everyone in the phases that they are in their lives from that point of view. And you just feel like you're good the way that you're complete and you don't really need much. And that feeling of releasing things and expectations comes from a lot of being disappointed and let down by, in this case, the medical system. So I don't really think that you fear or sweat the small stuff anymore.
Yeah, I guess really fighting for your health and yourself and backing yourself really does build this sort of confidence. You keep promises to yourself and you're like there for yourself. Just you touched on it there. How do you maintain friendships and relationships throughout all of this? Because I imagine that would be really hard.
I'll start by saying that my partner, I've been with him for over 5 years now, and we know each other for 7 years. He's been with me through the surgery, through the diagnosis, through every single up and down. So he was my closest friend before, and then we are together now. So we've seen each other in all possible ups and downs of life. He doesn't get scared easily. He stayed with me through everything. So it was never like, I'm afraid that he's going to leave. I was afraid, how is it going to impact him, seeing me suffer so much and having to take care of me. We're both young. It's not something we should be dealing with right now. But I was afraid of that, but he really went through it like a champ. So he was really great and very reliable and such a safe space for me. And my friends, they were the same. I guess I was lucky. I've never felt like I have to cancel this and someone would be like, oh, you're such a shit friend. I never had that. My closest friends are my friends from high school. They know me for a while. They've been through the panic attacks with me. Even the friends that I gained along the way, I never really felt like I have to hide who I am, because it's not my style. This is what you get, take it or leave it. So I never really had to be worried. I always showed up when I could, and I was honest about things, and I was always feeling supported by them. And I was lucky enough to never having to struggle with being guilty that I don't show up or I don't do this or that with them.
Is there like anything that your partner or your friends did that you were like, wow, that I didn't realize that would be so helpful? Or is there any advice you can give to partners of someone with autoimmune disease?
Oh, God, my partner, reading books and doing research. The guy went out and bought me every single book that he could find on gluten-free, dairy-free diet. And he started making meals with me. And he learned a lot about my condition, and he was asking me questions from my books, and he would always make sure that he keeps me to a gym schedule even after my surgery where I could barely move. I was very adamant about going 30 days on a treadmill every day to just keep my mental health and my physical health as well. So he was very adamant about that and very encouraging. He's very calm and stable. I'm very bubbly and extroverted. So we're exactly the opposite. So he was always like that calm presence that always rationally thought what can help her next. And he was there all the time. But the most helpful thing that he did for me was just listening and being there. Really, I wasn't expecting him to do anything of any of the things that he did, but he did them nonetheless. But I think the most helpful thing for me was the fact that he was just always willing to listen. When I was feeling extremely sad that I couldn't go to the gym, because at that point I was really used to, before my surgery, I was really used to go to the gym every day. And then I couldn't go and lift weights for like 3 months. And I was extremely sad and depressed. He was there for me all the time, making me feel happy, going through the motions with me. So I feel like just that is an extremely helpful thing to have in a partner.
I love that. I'm so glad that you had that network, that support network, because you really deserve it. I want to talk about life now. Can you talk me through the day in a life of you? Everything from what you eat, exercise, stress, work, or even a week in your life?
Okay, let's start with the day. Because I do a lot in a day. So I own my business, Her Aligned. I am a menstrual cycle nutritionist. I'm really tuned into focusing on women, helping them navigate period problems with nutrition and gut healing at the core. And that involves any period problems, including thyroid problems. So my day-to-day, as you can imagine, looks very different every day. But one thing that I always do is I cook. I'm very blessed that I love to cook and I just love to experiment every day. Part of my job is sharing recipes because that is how I want to empower women to take care of themselves. So I'm always going to share 1 or 2 recipes in a week. So I test and trial a lot. So let's say on a Monday morning, I will start with I recently switched from matcha to cacao, ceremonial cacao, and it's amazing. I have so much more energy. And I'm not that bloated. Matcha apparently made me bloated. No matter how many amazing benefits it has, I think it can be harsh, especially since you couple it with oat milk, like I did. Don't kill me, but I love oat milk. I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. I'm not smoking, I'm not drinking, I'm not partying. Let me have a vice. So I start every morning with, gosh, this is going to sound so hoity-toity, but I start every morning with my red light mask therapy session. And I love that. It was a gift. I really like it because I also have the one that I can put on my neck for my thyroid. There's a lot of research, emerging research, on near-infrared light therapy on the benefits of stimulating the thyroid to produce the hormones. So I use it every morning. Even if I don't use the face one, I use the neck one for 15-20 minutes every morning, especially now since I'm in the middle of a flare-up. I need all the help that I can get. And then I just have my cacao and just read something on my Kindle or just like go through my journal. Every single morning, I spend half an hour doing that because it makes me grounded for the day. My days can be really hectic. Depends, like I have 3-4 meetings, a couple of clients. I have my membership to maintain. I want to go to the gym. I want to spend time with my partner. I want to cook. And I really have to have my morning routine. Like I stay grounded. So that's a non-negotiable for me. Can happen. Anything can happen. I'm doing that.
Can I ask why you don't have coffee? Or is that a silly question?
No, it's not a silly question at all. I quit coffee 8 years ago. More than that. I think maybe 10 actually. Because it was with my stomach ulcer, it was making my gut symptoms worse. And then it started really being terrible for my panic attacks. So now when I have a coffee, I immediately, because the spike from caffeine is like steady up. Matcha is steady, it's up, but it goes climbing up a bit slower, exactly, and it maintains you for longer. Whereas coffee is like up and down, very high peak, very low, and that doesn't work well with my body. So I love the smell. I cannot even have decaf because even that has a bit of caffeine and even that tips me over the edge. I love the smell. My partner has 6 a day. It's terrible. Maybe 4 now. I'm trying to help him reduce it, but maybe 4 now. But I always smell his coffee and I'm like, I really envy you because I would love to have a coffee, but I just can't have it because of my stomach. That's still very sensitive for me and it's a panic attack trigger. So it took me long and hard to learn that.
Fair enough. Sorry, you were saying the rest of your day. What does that look like?
As I said, it depends, but that's like my morning, a staple. Then I have breakfast. For breakfast, I'll go for some eggs, maybe a couple of eggs. 2 times a week, I always incorporate sardines for the omega-3s. And I live in the winters in Portugal, so I can say that they're cheap there. They're not cheap in the UK. I'm very well aware of that. I just feel like they're great for my skin. They pack a lot of nutrients. It's a bit of heavy metal getting into that conversation. So I wouldn't recommend more than 2-3 times a week, but I would have that with some sourdough bread. I'm still getting away from gluten, but from like extremely processed stuff. So if it's a good 4, 5, 6 ingredient sourdough, yeah, I'll have that every day. So I go to my local bakery like once or twice a week and I grab myself a sourdough loaf and I'll have that. Every morning I definitely aim for protein, fiber, and carbs. And then if I have some sprouts or whatever, but the main goal is to get 30 grams of protein. I usually also have my lunch for breakfast. So if I cooked something the day before, last week I did a really nice mince stew with like lots of veggies. I had that for breakfast with a bit of sourdough and some microgreens, and that was it. Set me up for 3 or 4 hours. I always make time for the gym. I go to the gym maybe about 4 times a week. I run 2 or 3 times. I go for weightlifting. So it really depends on the day. Then I'll have some meetings with my clients, some meetings with potential partnerships, for example. I really try to mind not sitting down for too long and really stretching my pelvic floor muscles and not sitting. I'm sitting right now cross-legged because that's really terrible for your pelvic floor. And
I'm going to uncross my legs now.
but it's so comfortable. So I try not to sit for too long because apparently even if I still have primary dysmenorrhea, and I learned that it can come from the fact that you have tight pelvic floor muscles. So that can be a reason for the pain and you feel it in your hips. So if you have like tight hips, that can be a reason for more painful periods. And to me, like that's boiling down to that right now. So every moment of the day, I try to be mindful, like I don't sit for 4 or 5 hours. I'm really trying to set alarms and be mindful of my posture, be mindful of just, standing up and stretching a little bit. And then for lunch, let's say I would have, depends what I have cooked. I always spend some time cooking in the weekend, like maybe 1 or 2 hours, and making the first 3 lunches and 3 dinners for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So whatever I have cooked in the weekend, I'll have it. And then I'll just work a few more hours and then go to the gym. Maybe around 3 or 4, I usually go to the gym. And then in the evening, I have a very strict routine, just like in the morning, where I do not touch screens for 2 hours before bed. Like I have my Kindle turned on black mode. It's really low brightness. I just read, or I just really love playing Scrabble before bed. I don't know, is that weird? I don't know, but my partner and I really love playing some board games before bed, like maybe 1 or 2 times a week we'll do that, which is really love our board games. Or we go for walks. If it's like pleasant outside, we go for like a 1 or 2 hour long walk around Lisbon.
Nice. Love Lisbon.
Have you been?
Yeah, a few times.
But definitely the no screens is non-negotiable. 1 day a week, I do love to just like spoil myself and just watch TV a bit later. We watch a series, for example, and it's something that we do together, and it's like a nice break. Because after all, trust me, it's not like common sense for me to just don't watch screens, stop replying to emails. Like I want to be all up in that. I want to reply to my clients. I want to check in on my members. I want to set the next incredible, exciting thing that comes my way. But I really try to make an effort to not. So I try to allow myself 1 or 2 nights a week to just relax, because it's also important to not try so hard all the damn time, because that can also bring a lot of stress.
Can I ask you what you think of supplements?
Yeah,
because obviously you're eating a lot of your amazing nutrients. What do you think of supplements?
Particularly for
example, like I was low in my omega-3s and I've started taking it and I have seen a difference. I eat a lot of fish though, so I don't understand why I had such low omega-3s, and I have chia seeds and all those things. So I do feel like that and magnesium and other supplements really help me. But then I know that it's an unregulated market and you need to be eating those foods.
For me, the first line of defense is food. So that's like always, no matter what. I currently don't take any supplements, and luckily I just did a bunch of tests and my vitamins and minerals are like on point. But it could be the reason why some people don't absorb it as well from foods is the quality of the foods. So let's say you get farm-raised salmon, which can, the things that they feed them can take away from the good stuff that eating it brings. It can be a gut impairment, so your gut is not able to absorb the certain vitamins and minerals from foods. Or it can be that the bioavailability from the particular supplement, if it's a good quality one, can work better with your body. It's very particular and it's very case by case. That's why it's really hard to say this supplement works for everyone. Like, I could be taking it and I could not see the same benefits that you do, but I do much better on a diet, like coming from nutrition instead of from supplements. So I always say try nutrition first. If it's a good quality supplement, always do the research behind it. Always email the company if you have some concerns and questions, like where is this ingredient sourced from? Where did you get this from? Is this approved by XYZ regulator? If they reply to you, it's a really good company. If they don't, maybe try others. That's what I say. Never be afraid to ask what you're spending your money on. They're your money after all. You have the right to know if what you're putting in your body is something that you should feel comfortable with.
And they're expensive.
And they're so expensive.
Really?
You still have to eat. So put that on top of the food that you're having. And it's not cheap to eat well.
I do want to talk about the clients that you work with and how have you seen any crazy success stories, or has something stayed with you throughout working with different women?
Yeah, since we're on the topic of thyroid autoimmune conditions, I won't give any names, but I'll say this story that I have this client we worked together for 3 months. She came to me, she was so lovely. She was like, Roxy, I need help. All the clients that I work with, they never need convincing. And I'm not in the business of convincing you to work with me, So she came to me, she's like, I need help. My thyroid is effed. I really need you to give me a protocol that I'll follow. There's these people that are type A and then type B. She was type A. She said, everything that you say to do, I will do it. I was like, you're the dream client to work with, because usually I have to put some convincing work into, don't forget to do this, don't forget to do that. Yeah. Her TSH was, I think, 11, which is extremely high because the normal is between 0.5 and 2, and hers was 11. She also had low T3, which is the thyroid active hormone, and low T4. So I just created a protocol for her, and we did a check-in she said, I do not need weekly check-ins or bi-weekly check-ins. I just want to talk to you once a month. I want you to tell me what I'm doing wrong and I'll run with it. So I just created her a protocol tailored perfectly to her case, and she followed it. And in 1 month, she actually had her TSH drop 3 points to 6.6 or 6.9. And that is extremely a lot. For anyone who doesn't know, it can take 2 years for your TSH to come back to normal. That's how much her gut, her liver, and her kidneys were needing support, and her stress levels. So this was like the 4-prong protocol that we created for her: gut, liver, stress, and kidneys. So she just thrived on that protocol. And it's the same protocol that I applied to me, tailored to her needs, of course. Everything is so personal. But I saw her doing so well, and after 3 months, it went almost back to normal, like everything. And now I'm actually waiting for her 6 months in for her to text me and tell me how is she doing, because she's due for another test of her thyroid. So that was a really great success stories. And pretty much I don't have such dramatic other examples, but pretty much every other client that I work with that has a thyroid issue follows the same pattern. And it's only because we focus on the gut. It's because we focus on the liver and the kidneys. So the thyroid hormone that gets produced, it gets produced 80% as T4. T4 is the inactive form. Every single cell in your body needs thyroid hormone. That T4 needs to be converted to T3 for the body and the cells to be able to use it. That conversion, so your thyroid only produces maybe a low percentage in compared to T4. So that T4 needs to be converted into T3. So basically what happens, the body just takes an iodine molecule and boom, we have T3. So that process of conversion happens in the gut mainly and in the liver. If the gut and the liver are not they're not healthy, there's some problems with it, your digestion is off, your vitamin absorption is off, there's some breakage, there's a permeability aspect, your liver is unhealthy, that conversion doesn't happen, so your body doesn't get the thyroid hormone that it needs, which is the T3. So once you work on those aspects, you should see an almost immediate improvement in the way that your body is. So less fatigue, more energy, less breakouts, returning of the cycle, basically regular ovulation, and just feeling better overall. And your hair should stop falling, because when you're in an autoimmune flare-up, your hair just falls in chunk. Like mine is like all over the bathroom walls right now. I just really needed to stop. But yeah, that's basically the reason why your body is so smart. It really knows what to do. So just focusing on those things, it's the most helpful things that you can do, short of going to a doctor and getting medicine.
Love that advice. Thank you. Before we finish with where listeners can find you and all of that good stuff, for those living with autoimmune disease, what do you wish people understood better about the condition? Are there any myths or misconceptions or overlooked facts or just something that you wish people knew more about the disease?
80% of thyroid autoimmune disease happens in women. So women are more predisposed to, actually in general, women are more predisposed to autoimmunity than men. And they got the shorter end of the stick basically when it comes to autoimmune conditions. So also genetic predisposition plays a huge role. That's something that you really need to take care of, and ask your mom, ask your dad, ask your living family if they ever had issues with their thyroid or they have a history of a thyroid condition. That can be a really strong indicator from when you're already very young for you to start going to check your thyroid if genetic predisposition is in your chart, in your lottery. The other thing is, what I wish I knew is, what I wish women knew is the gut link that I mentioned already a few times. That is what creates the perfect storm. So I really wish more women and men, everyone, would know how to eat better, like going back to the way that we used to eat. And I always say it, if your grandma doesn't know about it, don't eat it when you're in your healing journey, because it's not going to do you any good. It's not permanent. And you can go back to enjoying every single thing you want to enjoy, but your body needs to catch that break to restart its own rhythm, and it cannot if you're not supporting it in the right way, but it will restart if you help it.
Okay, now to finish with just a recap on you and where people can find you and more information around that.
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at heraligned. Same with my email. If you want to send me an email, it's roxy@heralignedhub.com, or you can go to Her Aligned Hub as my website. You can find a contact form in there. I'm really easy to get in touch with. I'm most active on Instagram. I also have a TikTok, but I'm most active on Instagram. So if you send me a message there, I'll always reply.
Amazing. Thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening and watching to the Living Health Podcast. If you are suffering with the same condition or you know someone who is, I hope you have practical information that you can take away or relate to some of the things that we've spoken about on this episode. We are always after feedback or recommendations, so please leave your thoughts or let us know who you'd like us to interview next.